How many times have you heard the word generational wealth, or like the phrase generational wealth? I'm trying to build generational wealth. I'm trying to get generational wealth. Over the last couple years, this phrase has gotten so popular, but I feel like people don't really understand what generational wealth is. And in this video, we about to dive all into it, and I'm gonna blow your mind. So be sure to watch this video all the way to the end. Be sure to like this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, comment, all that good stuff, right? Because we about to go in today. So we talking about generational wealth, right? So I remember ever since the pandemic hit, that's when this phrase generational wealth has really gotten so popular, because people have gotten exposed to more than just working a job for 25 years, whatever the case is. And so as I've been on a journey and time has gone by, I've been able to understand that life is about more than just money. Period. It's not just money, right? Generational wealth is not just money. So, do you know somebody that may not be the richest, but they are just a person filled with love? Or they have kids and their kids have so much love, right? That person or that person's child could give the world so much love because they were given to that as a child. And just because they're not a multimillionaire doesn't mean that they're not wealthy inside, or they're not wealthy with love, right? So outside of just money, because we are all brainwashed into thinking that money is the only metric of success, and it's the only thing that we need to be striving for. But what about everything else? So some things I want you to think about in regards to building generational wealth that maybe you've thought about, maybe you haven't. But if you really want to become a wealthy individual, live a life of prosperity, and really have a good life, then these are things that you want to think about, right? So the first thing that I want to talk about is, so generational wealth is the overarching, right? But the first thing is, what about your generational thoughts? Think about it. You have a parent. We all have parents. We all came from somewhere. And so we all came from somewhere. But when we were children, when we were kids, we had certain thought processes that were instilled in us, no matter what they were. No matter how you grew up. How you grew up is what dictated what your thought processes came to be as an adult. And those thought processes got passed down to you. And so those thought processes are either good or they're either bad, depending on the outcome of your life. Or they may just be indifferent. Some of your parents passed down some really bad thought processes, belief systems. Some of your parents passed down great thought processes. And that's why the generation now of new parents, everybody who's having kids now, they're trying to break those curses. They're trying to do things different because they're starting to understand and see how their parents affected them in their life now. So we're in this age of they call it the age of the Aquarius, but we're in this time where people are really waking up, and people are really trying to change certain patterns. So first things first, if you want to build generational wealth, you need to look at your generational thoughts. So what thought processes, belief systems have your parents passed down to you that are not conducive to building generational wealth? Because your thought processes and your belief systems are contributing to your ability to be able to generate the wealth. See, we think that it's about the money, but what about all the other things that are supporting cast of allowing you to make the money? Your thought process is what puts you in motion and allows you to do things. So if your thought process is controlling your actions, then your thoughts are controlling the outcomes that you're getting, cause and effect. So if your thoughts are not good, then your outcome won't be good, and therefore you will not create generational wealth, even if you say you want to create generational wealth. Right? This shit goes deep. Shit goes real deep. So first things first, ask yourself, what negative thoughts do I have? Maybe your parents instill self-doubt inside of you. You got to break that curse, because that is something generationally that got passed down to you, and it probably was indirectly, or they didn't mean to, because a lot of our parents meant well, but just because they meant well doesn't mean that the things that happened were good for us, right? So generational thoughts. What generational thoughts? Like, look at your family, look at your uncles, look at your aunties, look at your grandparents, look at your their cousins and brothers and sisters. Get to know your family on a level of like, damn, this is where I come from. Now I see where I come from. Where do I want to take this last name and go from there? So if you want to build generational wealth, we gotta get down to the bottom of like, what's our thought patterns and what has been passed down to us, and what is good and what is something that we need to get rid of if I want to really build true wealth. Because you want to be able to pass down those things to your children, to your seeds, to your heirs. You get what I'm saying? So that's the first thing. The next thing is, what are your generational habits? What are your generational habits? Once again, all these things, when we're talking about generationally, it's about where things started. And so, where did certain habits in your family start? Whether you have good habits or bad habits. Do you have addictions that run in your family? You gotta reverse engineer where the addictions came from. Where did they start? And why? And then you gotta be able to say, okay, they started here, they trickled down, but they stopped with me. I'm gonna be intentional about ensuring that I do not continue this negative generational thing, this generational habit. It could be alcohol. It could be narcotics. It could be gambling. It could be anything that is has a negative impact on your future outcomes based on your decisions. So, what are the generational habits of my family? Because this is where I come from. This is how I was raised. Do I have anger management issues? How are you gonna be able to have people be around you and those people feel safe if you got anger management issues? Do I talk to people in a disrespectful way? Did that habit get passed down to me? You get what I'm saying? What are the generational habits? Like, really think about this. How was I raised? What habits were passed down to me as a byproduct of the environment that I was just in? Am I violent? Do I need to really, check my violence? Do I like to always like be arguing? Was I always around yelling and screaming and chaos? Right? What are the generational habits that you have or that were instilled into you? And ask yourself, do I need to break these habits that I don't even know I had because I thought that they were just regular? A lot of times when you growing up, you think that things are just regular, but they're not regular. The only reason you think they're regular is because that is the environment that you were born into, so you know nothing else. Right? So if you want to build generational wealth, you got to check and assess your generational habits. So that's the second thing. The next thing, and this is a very, very important one, and it plagues so many people, and people don't like talking about it, but What's the generational diet of the family, right? And we could look at this from the perspective of the health ailments. So I remember when I was younger, I had switched my paradigm on family diseases. So you know how people be like, X runs in my family. Whatever that is. It could be lupus, it could be sickle cell, it could be whatever, right? It don't really matter what the ailment is, what the sickness is, what the illness is, but okay, let's reverse engineer this. What are the sicknesses that have been running in my family, right? And then from there, now let's really see why. Let's see why. What did my grandmother, what did my grandfather, how did they die? Was it because of an illness or was it just old age? And if it was an illness, what was the illness? And then you got to start looking at what is the cause of this illness. So let's just say dementia or Alzheimer's. That is a deterioration of the brain. Okay, so now if that's a deterioration of the brain, what could I do? What could I eat? What could I not eat so that my brain does not deteriorate at a fast pace? And that way I can live longer so that I can create more wealth for me and my family. Stuff goes deep. So what is the generational diet of me if I want to create generational wealth for the seeds that are coming from me? Right? We can't just be walking around eating whatever, thinking that we about to be wealthy and life is going to be good, because you're going to have the same things happen to you that happened to your grandmother, your grandfather. But the only difference is it's just going to be now modern day rather than what it used to be. So it's like, for me, it's not just about the money. It's about the prosperity. It's about the quality of life. It's about the example that I'm going to be able to set for my heirs, for my seeds when the time comes. I don't got kids right now, but this is what I'm focused on. And when I do have children, I'm going to be able to pass down to them good eating habits. I'm going to be able to let them know what they need to be eating, right? So that way, they're going to know and understand how they need to be operating to carry on the family name. Right? You got to give things meaning. You got to really value who you are. You got to value where you come from. You got to value where you're going. You got to value what you're creating. You got to value your legacy, because that's what this is all about. Legacy. People want to create generational wealth for legacy, but you got to really tap in to like the deeper meaning and the deeper purpose behind it all. So what is the generational diet that I came from? And does that need to change with me? And what am I going to give my children in regards to dieting? Because when you understand and learn that food is the medicine, but it's also the cause of illnesses, right? Diseases. When you look at the words like disease, it's dis-ease. So it's not at ease. That is what a disease is. Your body is not at ease. So what would put my body at ease? Probably a different type of diet, right? I've been taught that there's no such thing as like a family illness. It's a family diet. So your auntie knows the recipe. That's why certain families have recipes, but sometimes those recipes are not good for our bodies. And so you got to start to learn how to eat a certain way, so that way you can have longevity in your life. Learn how to fast, right? Have the courage to do things that are not traditional, but that could change your life for the better. So that's the third thing. Like the generational diet, that's a real thing. And the fourth thing is like, what are the generational morals and the principles that you are operating out of that are inside of you? How are you hardwired? right? What are the principles and morals that you living by? Did you have any principles and morals? It's people right now that when they was growing up, they had no morals, they had no principles, and that's why they was out just robbing people, stealing, right? Stealing cars, Grand Theft Auto. Now they doing 18 years in prison. Now they doing 24 years in prison. Now they doing 88 years in prison. All because they had no morals and no principles, and that's generational. Because that was passed down to them, and their parents was in prison, right? And their uncles was in prison. So it's like, that's just what it is with them. And because when you're born into an environment like that, you don't know anything else. So if you want to truly create real generational wealth, and not just from a financial perspective, then you got to really tap in on a deeper frequency and a higher frequency to be able to see things past just the money. Don't let the money blind you. Do not let the money blind you from everything else that you have to do. Because here's what happens. You can get the money, but if you're not doing the work, that money is very fleeting. The Bible says that. The Bible talks about how money is fleeting. It's not about how much money you can get, but it's really about how much work can you do on yourself. And then that work that you do on yourself is going to allow you to get the money. And then when the money comes, you ain't going to lose your mind. You ain't going to go crazy. You ain't going to have all these other issues and problems because you have been able to master certain things because you've been doing the work on yourself on a deep, deep, deep level. So generationally, what are you doing? You got to know where you came from, and you got to know where you're going. And you are the bridge between where you came from and where you're going. You are the bridge. So I want you to understand that. You got to know where you came from, your parents, their parents, your parents' siblings. You got to understand the family dynamics. How did your grandparents pass away? If they did, how did your parents pass away? What was your parents' relationship with their parents, which is your grandparents? What was that relationship? Because if you could learn that, you could learn a lot about yourself. If you don't know your past, if you don't know where you come from, if you don't know your history, how are you going to know who you can become? How are you going to know who you truly are? You got to tap into you. You got to do this work. You got to go on that journey. You got to go learn where you come from. You got to go learn what are the things that have been passed down to me. And then you got to filter, this is good, this is not good, I don't need this, this is what I need. But you got to go build that relationship with the people in your family that can give you those answers. You feel what I'm saying? I really hope you do, because this could really change your life. It's not about money, right? Right now, we in a time where it's like, if you get on Instagram right now, you're going to see, oh, I made $20,000 in 30 days. I made $68,000 in 22 days. And it's like, that's great. I'm not hating on that. Go get your money. But on a deeper level than that, I'm trying to help you change your life. Not just make some money. I'm trying to help you become a better individual, live a more fulfilled life, live a more prosperous life. And generational wealth, it don't come from just making money now. Because if you turn a blind eye to your history, if you turn a blind eye to your family stuff, then you're not going to really access your full potential, right? You have to know how to face some shit, because you can't heal what you don't reveal, period. And also, like, the positioning. So when I'm looking at like wealth, I'm looking at positioning, because positioning is like, it's like nepotism. When you look at people who are in high places and they have children, their children always has the opportunity to follow in that parent's footsteps, because they blaze the trail, they have a blueprint, and they got the connections. So I want you to ask yourself, How were my parents positioned, and how did that help me with where I'm at today? Some parents went to an Ivy League school, and you were able to go to that Ivy League school. Some parents was lawyers, and now you have an in as a lawyer at a certain law school, and then you could go work at a certain firm or doctors, right, or something like that. But for some people, we ain't have none of that. And because of that, you got to really understand that, like, okay, this was the positioning that I was a byproduct of. Now, how can I position myself right now? So that way, in the future, when I have kids, or the kids that I do have, they can benefit from this. Because let me tell you something. Proximity is so powerful. So if you now are cognizant and aware of this, you can really be like, all right, I'm going to be intentional about the people that I let in my life and have access to me, because I know in the future I'm going to have kids, or I have kids right now, and the people that I let around my kids are going to directly influence them, even if it don't look like it, even if you don't know. Who is around your kids influences them, and it molds them into who they become. So if you're not in proximity to powerful people because you're not powerful yourself, or you're not influential yourself, then they're going to be a byproduct of whoever your children are around, right? So it's like, in order for you to be around successful, powerful people, you got to be that person, because you are what you attract, and you attract what you are. So positioning, that's how nepotism works. You become successful, you get in certain positions. Now your kid has access to that because they're in proximity to that by way of you. So this is what generational wealth is really about, right? It's also about unlearning the things that you have learned over the years. Because not only do you have your family, your parents, but you also got society, school. We've all been conditioned and indoctrinated with a lot of bullshit ways of thinking that are hard to break, especially if you grew up in the projects, right? Especially if you grew up on government assistance and stuff like that. You got to really work even harder to get up out of there. So really understand that you got to unlearn a lot of stuff. And in order to unlearn, you have to come to terms with the fact that you need to unlearn. You can't be walking out in life thinking that you know everything. You got to get rid of that part of your ego. Your ego can kill your progress, and it can make you stagnant, and it can have you stuck in the same place for a long time. So you really got to assess this stuff, right? And when I'm thinking about, generational wealth, I want you to think about this. Everybody says they want generational wealth, but they can't even hold money in investment accounts for a generation. In order to create generational wealth, you got to be able to hold your assets for a generation. Real talk. Real talk. So ask yourself, do I have that patience? If I got $30,000 in my brokerage account right now, can I not touch it? Can I not touch it? You got to be on that level. So you got to keep, building up your own personal cash flow. Keep putting money in your brokerage accounts, right? And then not touch it, because you plan on passing that down to the next generation that you've created. And you have to have trust within your family, your spouse, your children. And then you got to understand, how do living trust work, and revocable trust and irrevocable trust. You gotta get a lawyer on your team. You gotta get a lawyer on your team. Because what's the point of you making all this money while you living, and you don't have legal counsel that can show you and teach you how to really make things happen, and how to make things move and position things to the point where your last name is going to be good forever, right? It's not about the vanity. It's not about the vanity metrics. It truly is about digging deep and figuring out your purpose and asking yourself, what does my last name mean? If you a woman, the man that you choose to be with, you better make sure that his last name means something, and you better make sure that he knows what his last name means. And if you a man, you better know what your last name means. You better take pride in that, because this is what true generational wealth is. It ain't about just money, right? That's the byproduct of all this shit we talking about right here. It's not about just money. So that I really want to drive that point home. It's not about just money. It's about who are you as a person. When you walk in a room, what does your last name mean? When your name shows up on a screen, right? First name, last name. How do people feel about that? What is your social currency? What is your social currency? Like wealthy people, they be operating on a whole different time. That's why their last name means so much to them. That's why they be having all these businesses in the world right now. It just be people's last names. I want you to go look at some of the top companies. It just be people's last names. And we just be calling it whatever. But it be people's last names that be these billion-dollar companies, and they've been around for 80 years, 100 years. It's because they last name meant that much. They was like, I'm gonna put my last name on this, and this is what our family gonna stand for forever, and nobody is ever gonna mess with us. Ain't nobody ever gonna be able to play us, because our last names stand for something. That's true generational wealth. Generational wealth ain't making some money and then like buying a Lambo and you got a kid. That's not generational wealth. That's light work. We talking some way bigger shit. We talking real shit. Right? So I want you to think about them things. You know what I'm saying? What are the ideologies that have been passed down to you? What ideologies are you passing down to your kids? What ideologies do you want to pass down to your kids? Do you want to raise some broke kids? Do you want your kids becoming grown and they don't even know like how to live in the world? You got to give them the game. And in order to give them the game, you got to learn the game. And if you don't know the game, then you got to figure it out. You got to go through the journey. Right? So I want you to think about this, right? I know that generational wealth is a buzzword and people just say it to say it, but what does it really mean? What does it really mean to you? Don't just say you want to create generational wealth because you heard somebody say it and that sound good. Say that you want to create generational wealth and know what that really means to you on a deeper level. And when you understand it on a deeper level, you really gonna get busy and you gonna get to work and you gonna go all in on it. You feel what I'm saying? So I really hope that made sense. And I just want you guys to understand that don't chase the money, chase the purpose, chase the growth, chase the progress, chase you. You are your greatest asset. And when you understand that, the whole game changes for you forever. So I hope that blessed you. Let me know in the comments what you really rocking with, what hit home for you. And I'm going to see y'all in the next episode or the next video. Stay smooth, and I'm going to talk to y'all. Peace.